Okay, hello there everyone, and welcome to today's District Administration web seminar. It's great to have you all with us. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Kurt Isidurli. I'm the web seminar editor here at DA. The title of today's event, as you see here, is Digital Curriculum in the New Era of Distance Learning, What Really Matters, and is being brought to you through the generous support of our sponsor for today, Apex Learning. First off, as members of our audience are still coming in here, a bit of background about our topic for today and what we'll be learning about. With the sudden nationwide shift to distance learning, many school districts struggled to quickly implement a digital curriculum to support online learning. Today, administrators must plan for a near future where students will be returning to school with gaps in their learning and in need of additional support. Selecting and effectively utilizing digital tools and curriculum will be crucial to ensure learning time is optimized. Today we'll be discussing what to look for in a digital curriculum and how districts can best utilize online learning tools to differentiate content, method, and pace of learning for each student and identify areas where support is needed. We're looking forward to a very interesting and useful presentation and discussion here, plus live Q&A. We welcome your questions, so do stay tuned. We're going to get started in just a minute or two here. First off, though, just some standard housekeeping notes. First item, as it says here, for tech support, if you need it at any time, you can use the chat panel that you see at the right side of your screen there. If you don't see a chat panel there, you may have to activate that with the button at the bottom of the screen there. Just select the name of our event host and producer, Jason York. Let him know if you're having any technical difficulties. He'll be able to help you out there. Also, second item on the slide here, if you do need audio access over the phone, if you prefer that, if that's better for you, we'll post the phone number and access code also in that chat panel to right there. You can dial those at any time to get audio access over the phone. As I said earlier, we welcome your questions. The third item, as you see here on the slide, if you do have a question for our panelists, feel free to type it in the Q&A, bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. Feel free to ask a question at any time. We'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So once again, if you do have a question for our panelists, be sure to put it in the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A, bottom right-hand corner, and we'll get to those at the end. Also, speaking of questions, the last item you see on the slide here, we are commonly asked about accessing the content of our webinars at a later time, either the recording or the slides. And yes, just so everyone knows, everyone who registered or attended here today, you'll be getting a follow-up email with links to where you can view the archive recording or download the slides, a PDF of the slides. So if you want to go back over the content, if you want to share with anyone on your team, any of your colleagues, you'll have ample opportunity to do that. So don't worry about that. Keep an eye out for that email later on. Okay, so with that, on to our program. Today we're very fortunate to have with us this great panel. Gene Sharp is Chief Academic Officer at Apex Learning. We're also joined by Pete Getz. He's Director of Student Services in the William S. Hart Union High School School District in California. And we're joined by Rashad Slade. He's Executive Director of Student Assignment in the Guilford County Schools there in North Carolina. Jason Mitchell from Apex Learning is also with us. He's going to start us off here and moderate our discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to him. Jason, it's great to have you. Welcome to our webinar.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for letting us join you today. My name is Jason Mitchell, and it is my pleasure to be the moderator for our series of webinars. We really try and focus on preparing educators for the shift in the way that we educate our students, and doing that in the face of the incredible pace of change that we're all facing. And like most administrators, when I participated in strategic planning sessions, we were typically planning for the next 3 to 5 years. You know, we're creating a vision of what we aspire to be, and then dedicating teams to execute against that plan. And often we focused on small incremental changes, and we were always striving for that continuous improvement. And now we have seen the largest fundamental shift in the history of education take place, and it happened in less than 2 weeks. And this rapid pace of change and this uncertainty That seems to be the only constants right now. However, it's been amazing to see the innovation that's happening with districts. I was speaking with Dr. Kimberly McLean from Cincinnati Public Schools, and they are thinking of 4 different return scenarios for the fall. And it ranges everything from completely virtual to face-to-face and every option in between. They have 4 different teams that are working on each of those fall plans, and they're trying to think through how do you leverage teaching and learning with digital curriculum in a distance learning environment. That innovation, spurred by that uncertainty, is what many of us are grappling with. And in part, those are some of the questions that we're going to address today. How will you use the resources from teachers to digital curriculum effectively? And how will you do that to execute against your plans? And that question, or those questions, are what lead us to today's webinar, Digital Curriculum in the New Era of Distance Learning. What really matters when it comes to your resources that you've got? In this webinar, our panel, they're going to share ideas and strategies, tools, and resources that you can use to support your district, your teachers, your students during this transition. Today's webinar is brought to us today by Apex Learning. And for those of you who are not familiar with Apex, you can think of a place where opportunity thrives. Apex Learning provides digital curriculum for middle school and high school students. For our students, we push them to the very fullest potential they have, whether they are at risk, at promise, advanced placement, or anywhere in between. For our partner districts, we focus on delivering solutions around the challenges you face, like the ones that we're talking about today. The 3 hallmarks of an Apex Learning partnership: rigorous curriculum with supports and scaffolds for struggling students, actionable data for teachers so that they have great insights, and an implementation success team that's the very best in the industry. So leading the discussion today, we have Jean Sharp, and Jean is our digital curriculum expert. She's also Apex Learning's Chief Academic Officer, and she's here today to talk specifically about how you can leverage digital curriculum in different scenarios and what are some of the things that you should look for in effective digital curriculum. From there, we're going to transition to 2 district leaders, Dr. Rashad Slade of Guilford County and Dr. Pete Getz of William Hart Union High School District. So those two leaders, they're going to share different perspectives. They're going to share their experiences and insights and expertise on supporting their students' success with digital curriculum, especially in this new environment. And we actually solicited questions from a whole bunch of different stakeholders in this equation, from educators to parents to students. And Pete and Rashad are going to talk us through some of those questions and answers that we've got. So, Jean, as districts navigate this transition from school closures, and they're going to summer plans, they're thinking about fall contingency planning, would you talk us through some of the curriculum considerations from that side of the conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I'd be delighted to. Some of you may be familiar with Clayton Christensen's best-selling book, Disrupting Class. In this book, Christensen suggested that in order to reinvigorate our commitment to learning, we need disruptive change to push us toward innovation. Among Christensen's assertions are these: customized learning will help more students succeed in school. Student-centric classrooms will increase the demand for new technology. Computers must be distributively deployed to every student, and disruptive innovation can circumvent roadblocks that have prevented other attempts at school reform. And so I wonder, has COVID-19 been the disruptive change that can push us towards innovation? As we find ourselves at the end of the school year and planning for what school looks like in the fall, now is the time to pause and ask, what did we learn from this? And how will it change what we do going forward? Today, I'd like to seed some of that conversation with you, specifically as we think about digital curriculum and how it can meet the instructional needs of our students. Some of you may be familiar with the jobs-based design. This theory was introduced in Disrupting Class and in Blended, which is often referred to as the playbook for using disruptive innovation to improve schools. Michael Horn and Heather Staker share the jobs to be done theory. Perhaps you remember this movie, Field of Dreams. In that movie, the mantra was, if you build it, they will come, referring, of course, to a baseball field built on the edge of a cornfield in Iowa, where former baseball legends who had gone before would return once again to play the game they loved. Well, many companies often fall into the trap that thinking that just because a product or service is beneficial to a customer, the customer will embrace it. However, the jobs to be done theory suggests that is unlikely to work unless the product or service helps customers more affordably, conveniently, effectively do what they already had been trying to get done. Now more than ever, schools find themselves needing to get things done. They have jobs that demand solutions, and they look for a product or a service that they can hire to help them out. Digital curriculum has actually been helping schools get jobs done for many years, from credit recovery to initial credit, from virtual learning to blended learning, from remediation to intervention and test preparation to test remediation. Digital curriculum has been used in many programs and in many varieties of implementation models. And if we apply the jobs to be done mindset, there is opportunity to deepen our impact and increase the value of digital curriculum when we understand the needs of schools, recognize the challenges that schools are confronting and the results they need to achieve, and support schools that have already been trying to get things done, come alongside them to help them do it more efficiently and effectively, swiftly and seamlessly, and of course, affordably as well. This picture, this image has a lot to unpack. This is how we have thought about school and how it's evolved in the year 2020. And overlaying the role of technology and digital curriculum and how that role has played out in serving instructional needs offers some interesting insights about the movement toward digital transformation. Let's take a look in more detail. If we think back to January, and yes, it was only 5 months ago, the predominant model for learning was face-to-face, primarily with teacher-led instruction. That's been the model of school for years, and we value being together in a community of learners. Certainly, digital tools and applications were available to support instruction, but digital curriculum was often hired to support the needs of credit recovery and alternative learning programs where students could work at their own pace to recover credits and accelerate their learning to get on track for graduation. Beginning in March, when schools were forced to make that rapid shift to emergency remote learning, they needed to keep students engaged in learning and support learning continuity plans. Technology was hired to provide access to teacher-created assignments, to deliver synchronous teacher-led lessons, and to engage with students through tools like Zoom and MS Teams. And some, of course, began to gain familiarity with learning management systems. Now, there were schools who were already using digital curriculum who also saw this as an opportunity to expand the availability of digital curriculum so more students could continue to review grade level content and skills, and others could complete courses needed to graduate. As we move into the summer timeframe and the anticipated reopening of schools in the fall, many of you are planning for multiple scenarios, including online learning, a hybrid model with some face-to-face and some online learning, and a face-to-face model, but with contingency plans for rolling school closures. There are many concerns that we have with this extended time away from the classroom: learning loss, student engagement, acceleration for students who are ready for it next, and of course the social and emotional needs of our students among them. Whatever school looks like in the fall, digital curriculum can be hired to help you implement your programs effectively and seamlessly, no matter where learning takes place. But I have a suggestion for your consideration. With face-to-face time likely to be a precious commodity for the near term, I really encourage you to prioritize how you will use that time with your students for the things that are best done together. That may include testing, labs that require the use of special equipment, teacher-facilitated discussions, and project-based learning. And then consider hiring digital curriculum to support the things that can be done independently. Direct instruction, particularly of skills-based lessons, practice, and formative assessments that you can do when you are apart. Teachers play such a critical role in providing feedback, in checking for understanding, and monitoring student progress. But consider carefully how you will use the time when you are together and what you can do when you are not. Finally, I like to think about how we become future ready. And what would happen if we spend more of our classroom time building 21st century skills, equipping students as lifelong learners, and developing their capacity in areas of social and emotional learning to build resiliency, to manage change, and to persist through those difficulties? What if what we do together focuses on the things that require interaction and relationship building and collaboration, and we can hire digital curriculum to personalize learning that meets students where they are? Using digital curriculum actually requires a change in mindset. Jason, I'm wondering if you need to advance the slide. Oh, that's the one I just covered. The next one, please. Using digital curriculum actually requires a change in mindset. When you hire digital curriculum to do a job, there are some very clear benefits. Students have the opportunity to take ownership of their own learning, to work at their own pace and on their own pathway. And of course, digital curriculum brings student performance with immediate feedback and very transparent results for others to see as well. And for the teacher, this is a shift in the role. Digital curriculum drives a student-centered learning environment as students work on the content that they need to master. Teachers are learning coaches, helping students learn how to learn, clarifying misconceptions, deepening students' understanding and application of concepts. And teachers utilize data to inform instructional decisions and guide student learning. This is definitely worth more conversation, but we must equip teachers to guide student learning in a virtual environment. Selecting the right digital curriculum is key to delivering high-quality instruction no matter where learning takes place. And your role in evaluating digital curriculum solutions is critical to ensuring your program goals are supported. I want to point you to a resource that you can use to create your framework for evaluation. Several years ago, the Center for Digital Education, working in collaboration with COSN and ISTE, produced this guide for choosing digital content and curriculum. It was really designed to help districts address some of the challenges of moving from a print-based curriculum to a digital-based curriculum. It provides context and promising practices and offers a list of considerations for selecting digital content and curriculum. The publication is free to download, and I've provided the link in this document. But while the document serves as a good starting point, I encourage you to make it your own and establish the criteria that you need based on your needs. For our purposes today, I've pulled some of the criteria that are provided in the guide and added others that have emerged since the time of this particular publication. The list can be a bit daunting, but let me highlight just a few that are part of the critical conversation that we're having right now as districts consider online solutions. Schools expect digital curriculum to be standards-driven, and this goes beyond alignment to the standards and instead really requires that the instruction be designed to meet the spirit and intent of the standard. Schools expect digital curriculum to engage students with content. Students are active learners. So we want them to work with the content in a variety of ways to support their learning. Schools expect that student pathways through curriculum can be personalized to meet the needs of the individual student. An example of that would be a pretest that customizes the learning assignment for the student based on the individual student results. And let's consider just a few others. Schools need digital content to be flexible, depending on the job that you need it to do and your implementation model. Schools need content that has been intentionally designed to provide accessibility to students. We think of this in terms of grade level content with intentional supports and scaffolds and functionality for those students who may need additional support to be successful. Digital curriculum must be available anytime and anywhere. And schools expect digital curriculum to provide evidence of positive learning outcomes for students. As you consider your needs, don't try to boil the ocean. Instead, identify and prioritize the characteristics that are most important to your needs and your success. About 2 weeks ago, Education Market Brief hosted a webinar as part of their COVID-19 briefing series, and educational leaders were asked to share what they need from publishers. The criteria you see here actually was compiled from the Q&A at the end of the session, but I thought it offered some interesting insights that may resonate with you. Many of these we've talked about already: flexibility, high quality content, integration, ease of use, and so forth. But I want to highlight two in particular. The first is think differently. These educational leaders indicated that they're looking for digital curriculum providers to bring their expertise, their promising practices, and their experience to bear to help them make this work. And the second, of course, is partners. Again, these educational leaders indicated they want companies with good customer experience and support who will partner with them to support student success. They believed that their success depends on that relationship. So there are many challenges, as we all know, that have emerged as a result of COVID-19. And we have ongoing conversations with our district partners and educational leaders to inform our priorities for the future as well. Through these conversations, let me share some of those priorities as we see them right now. The first is distance learning plans. The emergency remote learning plans that were developed in March have to evolve into continuity of learning plans that can be implemented with ease whenever school buildings need to be closed. Equity and access, ease of use, quality of instruction, the grade level content that is accessible to all learners is critical. All students must be afforded with equal opportunities for learning. Learning loss has been a conversation that we've heard a lot about, both learning loss and achievement gaps. And we believe that that actually will widen as a result of the school closures. Teachers need efficient ways to assess students' academic readiness against grade level standards and provide efficient and effective ways for them to remediate learning gaps. I mentioned social and emotional learning. Students and educators alike dealt with a massive upheaval to their education and their daily lives. They need to feel safe, supported, hopeful about the future. They need strong resiliency skills to adjust and manage to a new reality. We recognize that relationship between student well-being and academic progress. And I was particularly struck by a quote from the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale University, who said, "Social and emotional learning is critical to managing anxiety at this time. If you don't know how to deal with the lack of control of your future or the feelings of uncertainty that you have, your brain is going to go into fight or flight mode. And when your brain is in constant fight or flight mode, it's not in learning mode." And finally, the last one I want to point out now is teacher readiness. And certainly, as we made this transition to remote learning, it challenged teachers to learn new technology tools, develop new strategies for student engagement and motivation, and deliver instruction in a way that, candidly, most teachers had never done before. It was a lot. Districts now need to prepare teachers to teach in a virtual environment. In fact, one superintendent recently told us that their focus this summer is on professional learning because teachers need to be ready day one. Clearly, there are other concerns we could include, but I think these offer a really good starting point. So let me end with the question that we started with. When we think about digital curriculum in this new era of distance learning, what really matters? This is a question I've encouraged you to explore in our conversation today. And as a digital publisher, I think we need to ask ourselves the same question. So as you consider the jobs that you need done and how hiring digital curriculum can support you, I want you to know that we are committed to being aware of and attentive to your needs, to anticipating the challenges that you have and offering promising solutions, to come alongside you to help solve real problems and meet real student needs, to provide a high level of service for digital solutions and your implementation success, and to be your partner in helping all students succeed to their full potential.
Jean, I really appreciate your conversation, and I love that you ended with focusing on student success, because I think in the end, that's what we're all focused on doing. You took a broad and complex subject and distilled it down to I think what's most important is making sure that our students are okay. I'm going to transition the conversation to our speakers, and Rashada and Pete. So to you two, I mean, uncertainty seems to be one of the only constants right now. What contingencies are you all planning for in the fall? What do you need from your partners to achieve that? Rashad, do you want to go ahead and kick us off with that?
Sure. So for our fall planning, and I think this is pretty consistent with many of the districts that I've spoken with, but we're having to create plans for virtual academies, which is something new for us, and that is getting some feedback. That is K-12 virtual academy. So we've had some experience with the middle school to high school side of things, but now we're having to plan for the elementary side. So that is something different, and we're planning for it. We're also planning for blended schedules, not really knowing how many students will safely be able to attend schools on certain days. So thinking about flexible scheduling. Again, many districts are probably thinking through the same way. The professional learning, as we're coming up with a professional learning plan for our teachers, being able to support them through this remote learning. And if they are to come to school one day and maybe remotely the next, you have to prepare teachers for that. And of course, we're waiting on the state guidance. We don't want to be ahead of the curve so far that all of our planning and ideas will be for null. So we want to make sure we're not getting too far ahead, and that makes it that's a challenge in itself, because as a district you want to be progressive in your approach, but you still have to be smart in understanding that all of that could change within a pretty quick time frame.
Right. Boy, is that true. It's like go slow to go fast, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Excellent. Pete, how about you from your perspective?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very, very nice. Well, first of all, thank you for including me today. This has been very insightful so far. Jean, you presented some amazing information. It's really, I have my wheels spinning right now on my district. One thing that we've seen happen in our district, we're part of Northern LA County, District 712 of about 23,000 students. We've been using a digital online platform, actually Apex, for a number of years for an alternative ed setting. And we have integrated Apex into a number of different variables district-wide, including credit recovery for families that move into our community that might be out of pace or sequence with the way we do things in the physical classroom setting. We have taken this opportunity as the district to slow down a little bit, kind of like Rashad just had indicated. when we were thrown into a district-wide online environment, that was within a 48-hour period, like most of you, nationwide. And so it was kind of a crash course for everybody involved. And our independent study program using Apex was very easily able to transition into this, including the other uses as we had already established. But district-wide, having to create a program was another challenge. Now that we are in a position where we're wrapping up the school year, in fact, this week, we are really going back to the drawing board and looking at this as a transformational opportunity and looking forward. We are in the process of evaluating health guidelines from LA County, looking at the various needs of our community stakeholders, communicating with other feeder districts as well as the community college that's in our community that we're very closely aligned to. And we're also looking forward a number of years to really reevaluate what we're doing and using this as an opportunity from a philosophical as well as a content delivery approach. Are there things we can be doing differently with online curriculum? Are there courses that we could offer in an online manner that might be more conducive for learning or open up master schedules or present opportunities? We're also being very cautious moving forward in developing a series of different models for next fall in the immediate, with regard to planning, professional development, and like all of you, looking at unique populations throughout our community and campus, so special ed students, EL students, and there are a lot of variables to consider. And what we're really looking at is how can we best adapt our online content and availability to meet the needs of these various groups, staying aligned with what we're trying to do at a district level. So this has been it's been a challenging few months, but looking forward, it's giving us quite an opportunity to revisit what we've done for a number of years.
Right. That excitement I hear in your voice. It's I don't mean it to be tone deaf of the situation and environment that we're in, but we get the chance to hit some reset on some things that we've wanted to change for a while. So thank you both for that. I'm going to go to the next question, which is, now that we have a little bit better sense of the context that you each operate from, let's get a little bit more specific about the curriculum. So Jean had talked about the job that a digital curriculum is hired to do. So what jobs were you hiring digital curriculum to do? And I think, Pete, you mentioned this and why. And what also in the future would you hire them to do? So Rashad, do you want to take the first pass at that?
As serving as a foundation for teaching and learning. It's like the skeleton. It's not the end-all, be-all for teachers. We're not robots, but we do want to have a solid foundation of teaching and learning. So for me, I really see our digital curriculum as serving as that, and that's what we hire it for. We don't hire it to teach the student. We hire the teachers to teach the students, but we do provide this as a resource for teachers. You know, we really want teachers to have that flexibility to use their skill set. That's what they're qualified to do. They're qualified professionals in teaching. So we want them to really have that opportunity to be creative in their lesson planning and their instructional delivery. And they want to use that digital curriculum to first be aligned to state standards, making sure that it is relevant curriculum, and that's relevant as far as being culturally relevant and content specifically relevant, and flexible. Some teachers may want to just use a piece of the digital curriculum. Some teachers may want to use it more as a core curriculum. And to have that flexibility, that's what we hire the curriculum to do, is to serve its purpose as the flexibility of being able to use it however teachers need it to be used, with some guidance behind it.
Right. I think you raised some really important points in this conversation. I think often in this transition to digital curriculum, we see some hesitancy from teachers. I've heard teachers say, you know, is this going to replace me? And you pointed that out perfectly, that said, this does not replace a teacher. This supports what a teacher does. A teacher teaches the student. So I'm glad you brought that up. Pete, from your perspective, what jobs do you hire digital curriculum to do?
Well, initially, I think Rashad hit on a lot of what I was going to say, but I think when as we reevaluate our digital platform every year, and how we're integrating it, we are looking at servicing a number of different populations district-wide and making sure that the content has usability. We've spent a lot of time looking at the platform itself, even down to appearance and what student feedback and family feedback, which we've really enjoyed and loved. I think it is important to go back to what Rashad said, is the teachers are the ones teaching. And in our community, we have been committed to not just enrolling hundreds of students in an online environment where there was no oversight from a highly qualified instructor. That's not what learning is really about, at least in our community. And so when you look at integrating online and digital curriculum into a community, not just in a classroom across the board, we're looking at servicing a variety of needs. And then more importantly, how can we integrate that digital platform with regards to teacher support, student training, and bringing them on board, which is a big deal, into the online environment, which many students have very little experience, if any, outside of our most recent COVID closure. So those are things we're constantly evaluating. We're looking at a lot of feedback from all of our site stakeholders with regards to how we can be doing it differently. We have found that our online platform needs to constantly be able to be integrated in different environments for different purposes. And we've been very happy with what we've been able to do with Apex specifically, because it's given us the ability to do that. For example, I would say we have a number of students that are in an independent study environment or on comprehensive campuses that need access to AP courses that we might not have in our master schedule for a variety of reasons. Teacher availability, budget cuts, all of those things. At the same time, we can integrate the same program to meet the needs of a student who has very different needs, all working towards the same college or high school graduation requirements. So that flexibility is really important, the creativity and usability from a teacher perspective. The other thing we look at very closely is what can a teacher do in a variety of environments to integrate that into what they're already trying to accomplish in their content to make it more robust or more valid or more aligned with state standards. And therein lies a lot of the creativity side of what we're able to do with online content.
Boy, that's great. It's interesting, both you and Rashad, your conversations, they're different, but they have a lot of the same common elements in that. So flexibility, creativity, teacher focus on that. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to switch to the next question, which is, so once you've hired that digital curriculum, there are impacts on a lot of different stakeholders. And I want to start by talking about your students first. So when you think about attending to the needs of the students, and we're dealing with issues around equity of access, emotional trauma after all of this, and we need to attend to that. I heard a superintendent say that for this coming fall, the first 2 weeks of the next school year is only relationship building, and then they're going to get back to academics. And I'd never heard somebody make that kind of declarative statement before. It was really interesting, but I think it's attending to those social and emotional needs. Rashad, how are you all planning to support your students emotionally, socially, and equitably, and then finally academically?
Okay, so this one, as a district, it's our responsibility to provide that guidance to administrators, to teachers, to parents on how to emotionally support students during remote learning. No one knows. It's a new experience. So there are people at the district level that have an idea, but this is a new time for everyone. So we can use research and we can use best practices on how to actually do it. But I think this experience in itself has really opened up some opportunities to identify where we can support students emotionally. If you think about just the pandemic in itself, outside of teaching and learning, I mean, we have kids at home that are now in hostile environments where they needed school more so, and to be out of those home environments. They needed the food. So we've created 24-hour hotlines for students that may be living in these violent conditions or hostile conditions. We have a social and emotional learning department, and they are involved in a lot of the promoting and communicating of resources. The approach is just different in a remote learning environment than it is to face-to-face. And then you think about some of the emotional strains that some of our minority families are feeling with the current protests that are rapid all over the place. And so school then begins to take a back seat as far as what's really happening in real life. So you have to provide emotional support. We just received an email from our superintendent, just really taking a stand on some of the things that are happening with across the nation as far as the protest and how the emotional support and how we're going to emotionally support and just rise up to the occasion. So that from the emotional standpoint, it's a lot involved with that. And as educators, you have to understand, if students aren't progressing as such, you have to dig deeper and to really think about what is it that those students are experiencing. In our district, we serve approximately 72,000 students and across 126 schools. And to be able to really be a support system, an organization of support, that takes a lot. It takes a lot of people to do that. And then you transition to the equitable piece in which you asked me to speak on. So equity goes more than just technology, but in remote learning, technology is a key factor in being successful. You have to have it. So we've taken our approach. We're not a one-to-one district. So we've had to partner with community partners and agencies to support our efforts. Wi-Fi becomes an issue when you think about equity of access. So we can't expect students to do certain things if they don't have the tools and the resources to do those. So as a district, we can adopt smart buses and provide those Wi-Fi spots. But what we can do is identify gaps as a leadership and not shying away from those gaps, but approaching those gaps head on and saying, hey, where are our inequities evident and what can we do to really address those instead of sweeping them under the rug per se. And academically, it goes back to those three things. Emotionally, we have to support students emotionally, equitably, and academically. There's a learning curve for everyone. So in order for a student to be able to learn, the teacher has to feel comfortable teaching that student. So, it goes back to the learning curve. We've had such a rapid shift in practice, and we've got to address that from an academic standpoint and acknowledge it. But this past spring, it's provided us with an opportunity to improve over the summer and really come out swinging in the fall at full go, feeling stronger and more confident. And we're still going to experience bumps in the road. We don't know. It may be a second phase of this, and then we'll have to recreate the whole thing. But I think the experience has made us stronger as a district and as educators as a whole.
That's such a great perspective, and I think that your comment to continuous improvement, that we've gotten better, we will continue to get better, and it is okay that we're learning in the process. I think that's fantastic. Pete, how about from your perspective when we're talking about supporting students socially, emotionally, equitably, and academically?
What's interesting with the question, in our district, social emotional wellness, social emotional learning, therapeutic support, community resources have been such an integral part of our environment for the last 5-6 years as this has really become prominent and important. When you really start looking at this question, you take what we're all here about, we're educators, you take academics and put it on the back burner and say, like Rashad just said from his superintendent, we're going to worry about building relationships and supporting our community. And then if we do that and we do it well, we'll be able to actually teach you something. And I think through this COVID closure in the last couple of months, our district at least has had a number of resources that we're very good at integrating, but we've really struggled to do so when we're in a remote environment. And we've seen increase of domestic violence, hunger, lack of resources, just like every other school district nationwide. And we've had to really go in and tackle those one at a time to try and overcome them and support with the resources we currently have. I think moving forward, though, most importantly, when you really get down to it, how are we going to bring our students back on campus or possibly get in a position where we're transitioning in and out? The academic piece is going to come together and is going to constantly change. But how do you support your students, your families, and importantly, your teaching staff and your administrators, I would even say your classified staff on a campus, to be ready to transition back and forth? We've spent a lot of time, in fact, I was in a meeting this morning working with our community, our city, various resources throughout county to talk about what this is going to look like. And for us, it's really going back to, Jason, you said, it's a reset. We're going back to the drawing board saying we knew how to do it in a comprehensive, normal environment. And now we don't know when that's going to come back to us. So what are our resources? How can they work under a COVID crisis? How do they apply to the health requirements? Now all the social unrest and everything going on brings on a whole other component of social emotional support, which we're seeing students reach out to us even this morning via email, really struggling with what's happening in our environment. And so again, going back to the drawing board and evaluating what's available and how are we going to integrate it into these multiple platforms of teaching. And I think if we do it and we do it well, we will get to be able to get to the academic piece. But I believe, as Rashad stated, those first couple of weeks of school, no matter what it is going to be, is really going to be defining and set the tone for the remainder of the year with regards to how are we going to support our students and stakeholders emotionally. The equity issue and the access issue is an ongoing, constant problem for us. And we're just assembling our teams and hitting those one-on-one as best we can. We're learning a lot through this process. Equity at this point means something very different than it did a few weeks ago. And we were fortunate in an environment where we are one-to-one, and we were able to distribute Chromebooks to families and students in hotspots very, very quickly. So we overcame that, but that created new equity issues that we didn't really even see coming. And so we're having to learn as we're evolving. It really is that we're revisiting a lot of things that we knew how to do well and having to sharpen our tools and plan for the future.
All of us are in that boat, and I think that one of the challenges that we see in that equation is something that was evidenced by a poll that we saw in USA Today, and it said that 60% of parents are looking for alternative options for their children in the fall. How in the world do we plan for that, and how do we communicate those plans to our parents? Pete, do you want to just pick up where you left off?
Yeah, interesting. That piece of data is reflective of our community. It's reflective of LA County right now. There are pocket areas that are really pushing to return for a variety of reasons. How do you plan for it? I think strategically, you really need to go back and look at your resources and availability. What we've decided as the district is not only have we polled our community and our students and families as to what you want to do, we've looked very closely at what our teachers want to do and what they're able to do. Because it's really coming down to you have a number of teachers that can't return because of underlying health concerns or possible age issues. The healthcare it brings in a whole different variable when you're looking at online learning. And so we're collecting this data, and what we're actually going to do is design a completely online program and then a variety of other, what we're calling it is kind of pick and choose what it could look like based on information we're receiving from the Department of Health, like you can open or you will be in a hybrid model. So we're really trying to plan for all of the different possibilities, but one we know for sure is that we are going to have a significant group that wants to stay online. And that being the case, we're taking what we've done the last 3 months, fine-tuning it, collaborating, spending the summers to work together within content areas, department areas, even communicating with our online provider, looking at our textbook providers, looking for outside resources to build a robust program moving into next year to service the needs of these families. We know in our community that if we don't provide this online environment or we do not expand our alternative online program, which is what we're talking about now through the use of Apex, we will lose a large number of students to online programs throughout our area. And there's a financial interest there too. And so we're trying to make sure that we're able to protect and maintain student enrollment, because that's critically important. For schools in California right now, the budgets are horrible. And we're really trying to look at all these different variables in planning. But going back specifically to the question, we're going to have to meet the needs of this group. And so we're in the process of planning for that. And a lot of it is a reflective practice on what didn't work the last couple months and what can we do differently and better. And we've learned a lot, like all of you have.
Yeah, that's great. Rashad, how are you all thinking about that in Guilford County?
So right now we're sending out surveys. We got to get feedback from parents and from students and really trying to get a good climate check on how has your experience been this spring since March. And as we collect that data and analyze that data, that will help us really connect with our families. More specifically, we serve a lot of students in high-need communities, and I'm not sure if they're really looking for alternative options. They just want to make sure that, hey, will my kids be safe? Will my kids be fed? Are my kids learning? I'm not looking to leave anywhere. I just want to be safe, be clear that the school that I'm sending my child to, that my child will be safe. They have to work. They have to do other things to make sure that they are getting food on that table. So I don't know if they're looking to redirect, but I think they are looking for some sense of security as to saying, hey, what will be in place to ensure that my child is safe? As a district, we are communicating through our local news outlets. Our superintendent and our district leaders, you'll see them on the news, and really keeping parents and families informed about our plans. And, we can only go but so far because of that, that state guidance that we also have to follow. But leveraging social media and our ongoing ways of promoting the benefits of being part of our school district. So those are practices that we're going to continue as we are trying to, retain families and keep our enrollment numbers up to par.
Right. I think you both hit on something. We've talked about all the different stakeholders, from students, parents, and to some degree teachers. I want to lean into the teacher conversation a little bit, because that same poll that USA Today took, they said as many as 1 in 5 teachers are planning on not returning to their profession in the fall. And Rashad, from everything that you were just talking about, how are you thinking about supporting teachers and stopping that loss and preparing them for the fall?
Well, I hear that. I wonder what the number is in normal conditions. The turnover rate for teachers is, in North Carolina, it's hard. It's a high turnover. So I wonder how many, in comparison to that 1 in 5, I don't know if that's much different than what our normal conditions. So that may be more or less for North Carolina specifically. But, if you think about some of our low-performing, high-need schools, that number is high anyway without a pandemic. So we have to really lean on leadership. It's going to take that leadership, and what environment are you creating for teachers as a leader? Remote learning is new for the majority of teachers and leaders. So as we move forward, we have to learn to understand what works for me, what works for my teachers, what works for my students. And you think about new teachers that are coming into the profession for the first time, and they're doing this remotely. That's going to be a challenge in itself in trying to navigate that, I would assume. Some may dive right in, and that's perfectly all and well for them, but a lot of teachers may not be able to handle that load. So that does create a barrier. So I think support is a must, putting the proper support in place, whether that's district support, administrative support, and also peer support. We've got some really good teachers that are thriving in this environment. So to really have those teachers to serve as mentors and serve as points of contacts will be critical to identify those, in which we have. We have identified a lot of teachers who are doing work over the summer for us. And those would be the teacher leaders that we would lean on to try to, hold on to their peers in avoiding some of this high and toward our retention efforts. We got to go in with we are in this together attitude. It can't be a go to your basement and figure it out. You can't go in with that approach. And don't be afraid to make a mistake. Hey, let's have a web conference, and if the camera cuts off and we can't hear anybody, then we'll just try it again. So it's that climate and that environment that the leadership is creating.
Excellent. Great suggestions. Pete, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, again, we have issued our survey. We're actually going to do the survey several times throughout the summer to see how that input and that need for both our students and families as well as our teachers changes throughout the summer based on COVID updates and any other information we're going to receive. We know the summer is going to, especially now, is going to be telling. So we're going to constantly get that feedback. I think one thing that we've learned, I mean, a specific strategy and something that we've picked up on in the last couple of weeks, I wish we would have grabbed it earlier, is, like Rashad said, we have some teachers that went into this environment that are incredible. They weren't trained to teach in an online environment. They didn't want to be in an online environment, but they have done some amazing things. They've discovered resources, websites, tools, resources, strategies that we had no idea were out there or they were using. And so the sharing of best practices at a district level and supported by district leadership to make sure that if you have a teacher that is a rock star biology teacher developing this program can be distributed district-wide, especially as your online program could grow, expand. One day you're online, one day you're closed. You need a way to share those best practices and use those people as content and online experts. And that's one of the things that we're really putting some considerable amount of time into going into the summer is who were the rock stars and how can we bring them together? And part of that piece is there are a lot of people that are going to want to go into the online teaching environment because they have to, they're scared and they need to, and they might not be these experts, so to speak, but how do we make sure they have access to what we know is working? And so we have to create a platform that shares that. We can't just assume it's going to get out there. That's part of what we're doing as a district is we're bringing all of our science teachers together, content specialized, to talk about what do we do, how did it work? Last year, when we were planning for our summer PD, that was very much about moving forward with regards to NGSS and what we commonly knew was this is normal. And now we're planning for the unknown. And so we're still using that PD time, and a lot of it's going to be through digital platforms like Zoom and like this, not as much hands-on as we would like, but it really is to start bringing people together to keep our staff connected to the job, connected to the district, connected to one another as we go into planning next year. I think that's critically important. We have seen, I've witnessed with my own teaching staff, we're seeing students kind of teeter off as far as involvement as we've been doing this for 3 months. And now we're starting to see teachers start to step back. Granted, it is summer, but we're worried about getting into summer and having too much of that happen and losing connectivity. We need each other, especially going into next fall, and that planning is critically important.
Boy, you're right about that. Relationships matter. We've got about 1 minute left, and I'm gonna ask one final question from each of you. So Gene and I have talked a lot about failing forward, and this quote we both really like that says, "There are no mistakes, there are only lessons." And I think that really sort of punctuates the point of continuous learning. How do we keep getting better? So Pete, you want to pick up where you left off? What are your final words of wisdom for people who are in this work?
Honestly, I've kind of adopted the policy that we can do no wrong as long as we have the best intentions of our students and our families and our community and our staff at heart, then we can try anything. And again, going back to, this is transformational. For the first time in 200 years, education is being asked to go all the way back to the drawing board and revisit how we do what we do really well. And that means you bring your creative minds together, and we're better as a group, we're better as a nation looking at one another as to sharing best practices and really fine-tuning what's working and giving everyone a voice in that process.
Yep. And it's oddly an exciting time. There are some good things that we're able to do with this. Rashad, what about from you? Final words of wisdom. Oh, I think Rashad's there. There you go.
Okay, from a partnership standpoint, Apex has a really comprehensive curriculum for middle and high schools, and we absolutely love it. And we would love to have that on the elementary level. So I don't know what that takes from your engineering standpoint or content folks, but that would be really icing on the cake if we could expand that. Also, I want to commend Apex on just their flexibility during COVID-19. And I asked to improve, just to continue to balance, your business goals with district needs. There is a fine line there. I understand that there is a business aspect of the service in itself and the partnership, but also districts trying to navigate in uncertain times. We just don't know in some things. So Apex has been really great with that, and I ask that continue to operate in that manner. And just being the responsive service that we've experienced for the past 4 years now, 3 to 4 years now that we've been partners. So we definitely appreciate it, and really do appreciate the fact that Apex does listen to the feedback that's given, and the responsiveness it follows up after that. So thank you for that, and we look forward to our continued partnership.
Boy, it is absolutely our pleasure. And I would just say that I can't believe that this was an hour. It flew by. But first and foremost, I'd say that the students and the teachers in the schools and the communities that you both serve, they have incredible assets and student advocates in both of you. Thank you for what you do. It is, Rashad, Pete, it is our privilege to work with you and both of your teams, all of your teams. And we at Apex, we're proud to be part of your solution. And I'd say to the team at DA as well, we want to thank you for the opportunity to share the experiences and the insights from the experts. So this is Jason Mitchell and Gene Sharp from Apex Learning. We're signing off, and Kurt, you can wrap us up.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. And yes, on behalf of all of us here at DA, thank you to our panelists today, Gene and Pete and Rashad. We really appreciate you all taking the time to share your time and expertise with us here. Thanks again to our sponsor, Apex Learning, for their generous support. And a couple quick reminders for our audience. First off, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found our presentation and discussion informative and useful to you. Producing webinars like this one is just part of our mission here at DA to inform school and district leaders like you about the latest news and trends in K-12 management. You'll find more coverage about issues such as the ones we discussed here in the pages of our print magazine, as well as our digital edition and website through additional webinars like this one, and through our various email newsletters, which you can sign up for right on our website. And as I mentioned before, just another reminder, for those of you who would like to share the content of this webinar with your colleagues, or if you want to go back over the presentation at your own pace, you can access the archive recording at the URL on your screen here. And if you'd like to download the slides, keep an eye out for that follow-up email we will be sending to everyone with links to the slides as well as the archive recording. So you'll be able to go back over them at your leisure. So that is it for today's event. Once again, I'm Kurt Eisler for District Administration. On behalf of everyone here, goodbye everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your school year. Thanks so much for joining us today.